My name is Dr. Ian Storch. I'm a board-certified gastroenterologist and osteopathic physician, and you are listening to DO or Do Not. If you're interested in joining our team or have suggestions or comments, please contact us at doordonotpodcast.com. Share our link with your friends and like us on Apple Podcasts, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We hope you enjoy this episode.
My name is Violet Sullivan, and I am a pre-osteopathic medical student who will be attending the University of New England in the fall, and you're listening to DO or Do Not. Today's guest speaker is Chrissa Karagiannis, a fourth-year medical student at Touro, California College of Osteopathic Medicine, who is currently in the thick of residency, applications, and interviews for family medicine. In today's episode, Chrissa will share with us her experience participating in the National Health Service Corps Scholarship Program and explain how she and other students interested in primary care can use it to alleviate the financial burdens of becoming a physician. Chrissa will share her journey to osteopathic medical school and her passion for working with underserved populations, specifically in overdose prevention. Chrissa will share her involvement with SOMA's Overdose Prevention Committee and her experience with the AACOM Health Policy Internship, advocating for vulnerable populations and focusing on education for overdose training. Ultimately, I was inspired by Chrissa's passion for advocacy and service with the opioid crisis, and I know you will enjoy this episode as much as we did.
All right, Chrissa, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Yeah, I really appreciate being here.
So just so you know, we don't typically interview students. We try to get people with a little more experience just because we feel like there's a value. But sometimes there are students that are exceptional. And the fact that the dean, Tammy Hendricks, who I think is one of our rock star DO deans, said that you're amazing, makes you a no-brainer.
I'm just blushing. I saw the people on your podcast and I was like, I'm walking on the shoulders of giants here. So all the osteopathic greats have been on your podcast so far.
Appreciate it. Yeah. So the main reason we want to have you on the podcast is that one of the best places for us to poach guests is from the DO, which is really just an amazing publication. And they have great features. And you wrote a little article about a National Health Services scholarship. So can you just start by telling our listeners what that is and what the organization does?
So National Health Service Corps, it's a federal program. There's two programs you can be in, either the scholarship program, which typically starts during medical school or other health professions can get it too, or there's the loan repayment program, which you typically get into after residency and beyond. So the scholarship program is essentially a commitment to a primary care career, either family medicine, pediatrics, psychiatry, OB. In exchange for going into the primary care setting, you get tuition paid for. You get a monthly stipend, a yearly stipend for other reasonable costs, and you commit to a service commitment after your residency finishes up. So for me, I'm going into family medicine, applying and interviewing right now. And after I graduate, I will spend 3 years in what they call HPSA, or a health professional shortage area. And depending on whether you're in the scholarship program or the loan repayment program, you have to find a site that meets a certain score criteria for that shortage area. So typically the scholarship recipients have a pretty high HPSA score, which is just kind of an attestament to their commitment to the underserved. So that's just a little bit about it. It's a really great program. And most recently, they've accepted more scholarships than ever under the recent administration, increasing funding to the scholarship program. So a really, really good option if you're interested in primary care.
First of all, that sounds great, and wrote this article. So we're going to treat you as the expert on the scholarship. You obviously know a lot about it. Let's say there's a student who wants to be a doctor. They're in high school, they go to college, they love pediatrics, or they love family practice. and they're like, look, this is really what I want to do. And I'm really worried about loan repayment. I'm really worried about this big nut that I have to borrow. And we've had a lot of people on the program who have talked about military scholarships. And obviously that's like a great option for somebody that's worried about the loan repayment. So let's say they want to do the primary care thing and they're looking into the scholarship. I guess a couple of questions. So the first question is, that I think would make most people nervous. Like, what happens if I haven't even done a rotation or anything medical? So now, like, I'm going to commit to this thing. And what happens if I fall in love with neurosurgery? Am I screwed 3 years? I shouldn't curse, but like, am I in trouble 3 years in? Is that going to be a problem? And then what does that look like? Do I still have to do family practice? So maybe start with that as like, how would you answer that? Or what do you think the scholarship would answer if that was asked?
Yes. So I would say the scholarship program is a really great fit for people that are 100% certain that they want to go into some sort of primary care setting. For me, the specialties that I was interested in really was family medicine, pediatrics, psychiatry, and OB. So when I was looking at the scholarship, it was a no-brainer for me. I wanted to go into one of those specialties no matter what, and I wasn't really interested in the other specialties. I say that because, as great as it is for people who want to go into primary care, there is a pretty stringent kind of clause if you accept the scholarship and then decide that you don't want to participate in the program anymore or fulfill your service commitment. So I think it's someone that wants to apply for this program needs to be really certain that primary care is really what their goal is. And I would also say, you don't have to apply going into your first year of medical school. I actually applied 3 times, I believe. I applied end of my first year, end of my second year, and I finally got it as I was going into clinical rotations. But at least for me, I'd always been certain that primary care was my goal. And so it wasn't as much of a risk for me to take. I knew when I was going to be going into my rotations that this was kind of always where I wanted to be. But it can certainly be a huge consideration for students that are really not 100% certain on where they want to go after medical school.
All right. So that's huge. And then again, I'm sorry to be a little personal, but you got it in your third year. Did they retroactively like give you money for the other years?
No, they didn't. So I still hold a little bit of debt. It's definitely not as much as would be had I finished my medical education without it. And I actually took 5 years of an OMM fellow. So I had an additional 3 years of education. So it did make a bit difference. I still have a bit of a debt burden, but it was worth it for me. And just because I was already going into the primary care setting, it just really made sense for me to participate.
Okay, so that's awesome. And then how many years do they usually ask for? That's my first question. And then, of course, like I know I'm going to interview you, so I did a little bit of my own research. And like I see that, you would think that underserved areas mean like Utah, but like, I saw that a lot of the underserved areas are actually in states like New York and California. So can you talk a little bit again about the years and then about the actual places that the person might be? And then is there a choice as to where you go?
Yeah, absolutely. So the minimum service commitment that you need to provide for the scholarship program is 2 years. So it's really in your best interest if you get the scholarship to ask for at least 2 years of funding because you're going to do 2 years no matter what. And then after that minimum 2 year service commitment, it's a year for every year you're funded. So, for example, I'm doing 3 years worth of funding. I'm going to have a 3 year service commitment after residency. And I felt the same way too. I was a little bit worried about that. I'm from the West Coast. I'm from the Bay Area, California. I was like, am I going to have to move out to the Midwest to a health professional shortage area? But there's really National Health Service Corps sites all over the country. And the only stipulation is after residency, you need to find a site that you're working at within 6 months of graduating. So that's pretty much the only commitment. I found sites all over the US in areas that I want to practice in after residency, and even programs that I'm working with now, interviewing at now, who have FQHCs attached that meet the service commitment that I would need to do after I graduate.
All right. So let's say there's someone listening that's like, this woman is amazing, meaning you, and this sounds really cool. I want to do this. This is exactly something that I would want to do too. Do they just log into a website and like, upload some documents? Do you have to have like a mentor supporting you? Do you have to have a letter from the president? What do you need to like apply for the scholarship?
It is an application. It's online. You can look up the requirements, application requirements on their website through the Bureau of Health Workforce. Let me try to remember, this was 3 years ago now. So I think it's 2 letters of recommendation, a couple essays that you need to write regarding your commitment to the underserved and what you want to do and why you want to do the National Service Corps Scholarship Program, and sending in your transcript that you full-time student at a medical school. So I would say go for it if you're interested in primary care. If you know that you want to work with the underserved, no matter what, which was always my goal personally, it feels like a really great program to enter. And I think it's worthwhile if primary care is what you're looking for. And of course, it's a great boon to the debt burden that we hold as medical students. So
Absolutely. Yeah, that's amazing. So, Chrissa, I'm going to take a step back. We're just going to talk a little bit about you. So, first of all, thank you for writing that piece on the DO. I think it was really nice. And I would reference any of our listeners to check out the article, obviously to look at the DO. Now, did they contact you to write that, or did you just submit it out of love for the scholarship?
they contacted me. I was one of the AACOM's health policy interns. And so I've been in, kind of contact with AACOM for quite a while. And so they reached out to me because they knew I was a scholar and said, we're collaborating with National Health Service Corps. We'd love to get a piece to learn a little more about that program. So that's kind of how I got into that and wrote that article.
Amazing. Yeah, it makes me feel good. They haven't contacted me to write anything, but yeah, we won't go there. We won't go there. Anyway, so tell us a little bit about you. Tell us, we know you grew up in the Bay Area. That's great. Tell us a little bit about how you grew up, the area that you grew up, and when you decided you wanted to go into medicine.
So grew up in the Bay Area, specifically like East Bay Area. It's a very hot and dry area. And I was really one of those people that was pretty sure I was going to be a physician from a very young age. When I was 13 or 14, my grandma had a pretty severe stroke. And it's funny because my brother kind of came out of that hating hospitals, but I almost felt like the hospital was my second home. I just felt so comfortable there. I loved being there every day. I loved talking with the physicians that were taking care of her. And so kind of from that point on, I always had my sights on it and always endeavored to make sure this is really what I was looking for, because it's, no light commitment that you go into to study to become a physician. And then ended up at UC Santa Cruz, did some research, was in biochemistry and molecular biology, and then spent a few years in Santa Cruz after actually working on substance use treatment policy, where I found a lot of passion for working on overdose prevention. And then, kind of from there, I was always confident. I scribed in the ER and I was like, this is really the path for me, and this is what I'm going to do for my life. So very happy. It was an early realization, but then I just kind of confirmed it that it was what I was looking for as I was getting older, that I knew I was getting myself into, in a sense.
Now, when did you find out about osteopathic medicine? And tell us a little bit about your application process.
It's a funny story. So I was one of those people that applied to 30 MD schools, one DO school. I got one interview and one acceptance, and it was really like the best thing that could have ever happened to me. I was scribing at an ER in Salinas, California, and there were actually medical students from Touro rotating through the ER. And I had worked with several other medical students from other classes. And what really struck me with these students was I noticed they were talking about a lot of the psychosocial issues that were surrounding the ER patients that we were seeing. And in a fast-paced setting like the ED, you really don't hear that every single day. So I asked them what school they were at. They said they were at Touro. It was out in the Bay Area. I was like, I didn't even know there was a medical school out in the East Bay Area. So looked into it, decided to apply there, and found that it was the easiest application that I wrote by far, because just so many of the tenets and principles of osteopathy spoke to me. So it was just a blast to actually go through the application questions. And looking back at it, I of course wish I had applied to more osteopathic schools, because it really just resonates with kind of who I am as a person. I think the osteopathic philosophy really is perfect fit for primary care as well. And so, yeah, I'm very tickled by being able to apply there, coming into Touro. And of course, I found a love of osteopathy so much that I took an extra year of my education to really dive deeply into it.
Yeah, I was going to comment on that. We interview a lot of people that have a similar sentiment that I find so interesting, that they start off not knowing that much about osteopathic medicine, like yourself, really more focusing on an MD path, ending up finding this love for osteopathic medicine, and then continuing on accelerated or advanced osteopathic training, extra time above and beyond their residency before they sort of finish up their training. I think it's so interesting that you're one of those people who are dedicating a year of your life to learning OMM. Tell us a little bit about, and I know some people do the fellowship because it decreases some of their tuition burden, but you already have a scholarship. So obviously that's not the reason that you did it. So tell us a little bit about why you decided to do an extra year of OMM before you go on to your residency.
Definitely. So, like I said, did not have any knowledge of osteopathy going into medical school. And then as you're just going through your preclinical curriculum, you're in OMM lab 2 or 3 times a week. And I just found that I really loved not only treatments, but also the philosophy that came with it. Every single time you're looking at a person, yes, they're complaining of right hip pain, but you're taking a fresh look at their entire system to see what's going on. You're doing a full structural exam to see what's going on and looking at the bigger picture of what's the global system looking like, rather than why does this person have this localized hip pain? Was it radiating from the shoulder or coming from the knees or coming from the toes or the navicular, as like my faculty loves to say. So I really loved that broad perspective. And I felt like I really needed to dive more deeply into it. We get 200, 300 hours in our preclinical education, but I feel like at times the application of osteopathy can be a little lacking in clinical rotations. Going out to community hospitals, you're working with allopathic colleagues, and you're not necessarily getting that supervision and attending attention on the osteopathic approach, or OMT. So I really wanted to take the time to do that. And the OMM fellowship does that fantastically. We spend 2 or 3 days a week doing fellows clinic, getting to treat people. We work with our osteopathic faculty members and work really closely with them, see what their approach is. And I think we really get what I think should be more incorporated into the clinical setting, which is how do we actually apply what we've learned in the preclinical setting in the clinical setting? We do that with all of our clinical rotations, and that's why we have clerkships. But I do feel like there needs to be more incorporation of that into our medical education in general. So that was one aspect of it. And then the other aspect is the teaching. I love teaching students. I think that's so much fun. First and second year medical students come in with so much hope and vigor and inspiration and enthusiasm. It's really lovely to teach them. And so that's another part of the teaching fellowship that I really, really enjoy. So many reasons. I could say so much more about the OMM fellowship. It's been one of the best experiences I've had in medical school. I feel really lucky to have been able to be participating in it, and I'm really going to miss it.
Now, did you apply through the match, or are you doing that now for family practice?
Doing it right now. Yep, right in the thick of it.
Right. And tell us a little bit about, obviously you don't know where you're going yet, but I guess my first question is, you already said you were focused on primary care. Did you think about internal medicine? Did you think about, again, you mentioned psych or pediatrics or all these other primary care specialties? Were these thoughts in your head? And when did you finally solidify on family practice? And now that you're going through the application process, give us some ideas of what you're looking for in a program.
Definitely. I'm really one of those people, once I set my mind on something, it's kind of like, that's what I'm going for. And I feel very certain in it. But I wanted to keep an open mind. When I went on clerkship rotations, I found that I loved every single clerkship rotation so much. And I had a brief existential crisis about what I was going to do because I loved everything. And then I was like, oh, wait. What specialty can you really get a broad scope of being able to do so many different things except for family medicine? So it was kind of a full circle experience for me of coming back to primary care setting. I was surprised to find out during clerkships how much I loved inpatient training. So for the family medicine programs that I'm looking for kind of full spectrum family medicine where you're the primary physician for a range of different conditions in the inpatient and outpatient setting, doing procedures inpatient as well as outpatient, and really being that general practitioner that has that broad scope. So those are kind of the programs that I'm looking for personally right now as we're going through this season, application season.
Are you looking for a more rural program? Are you looking for academic versus community program? Are you just applying broadly and just saying, I'll see what I can get? Do you have a focus? And then how many programs do you think you can apply to? And have you started interviewing?
Yes, have started interviewing. Tomorrow marks interview 9 out of 11. So I'm right at the tail end of all of my interviews. When I did my audition rotations, I really explored what kind of setting I was looking for. So I went to academic centers, I went to community-based hospitals, I went to rural-based hospitals, and I kind of settled on, I would say, urban underserved is kind of the setting that I'm looking for personally. Whether that's an academic hospital or a community hospital is not as important to me personally. What was important was that I had a diverse patient population that I'd be serving, and that I would be working either at an FQHC or a county public health department or somewhere that has underserved populations that are primarily Medi-Cal, Medicaid patients. So that's kind of the crux of what I was looking for. And I didn't apply to as many programs as I think many students do. I only applied to 20. I felt like those were the programs that I could really see myself in. And, I got interviews for most of those programs, but then again, just kind of had to settle and focus in on where could I really see myself. And so settled on actually only taking 11 interviews in the end, which might be controversial to some. Some people, I think the average for FM is about 42 programs. So definitely was a different approach for me, but I just felt like I kind of knew what I was looking for. And I didn't really want to waste my time or waste the program's time on interviewing for something that really what my heart was not in it.
I may get the term wrong, but there's a specific qualification. I understand, like AOA recognition, or, there's a specific star that the AOA puts on certain programs for incorporating osteopathic principles in practice and things like that. Did you apply to any of those programs, or was that on your radar? Was that important to you? Not important? Like, look, I already did an OMM year, so I don't need that. Or I did an OMM year and I really want that. Did that factor in?
At first, I thought osteopathic recognition was going to be something that I was really looking for. But as again, I did audition rotations and worked at programs that had osteopathic recognition, I did appreciate that, first and foremost, they have faculty that you'd be able to work with and could supervise you in your OMT and osteopathic skills. But I definitely fell in the camp of, I've already done a year of osteopathic fellowship. I'm ready to hit the ground running and just kind of see people for the rest of my life and kind of learn pathology and just work with people and grow and learn from the clinical setting. So as I've gone on in the interview season, I've realized that there's other skills that I feel like I want to work on and improve, such as like my inpatient and hospitalist based training, that are more important to me at this point than having an osteopathic recognition, because OMT is going to be incorporated in my practice for the rest of my life. And I know that's a part of my identity that's never going to go away. So I want to find the things that I'm scared of and that I feel like I need to improve on. And osteopathy is just something I will continually improve on and I will continually incorporate. So trying to find the other things that I need to work on and need to improve.
You also mentioned at one point earlier in the interview that you were involved in political advocacy. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you got involved, when you got involved with that, and whether you see yourself doing that going forward?
So I was very fortunate before medical school. I had several jobs in substance use treatment advocacy and overdose prevention training, as well as harm reduction advocacy. And so I think I got a lot of early exposure prior to medical school in the importance of having and speaking up and using your voice and advocating for vulnerable and underserved populations. And so that just kind of continued in medical school for me. I was very involved with my local opioid coalition in Solano County, passing out Narcan. We ultimately passed out, I think it was over 1,000 Narcan kits to individuals that I had trained in a year, which resulted in several overdose reversals. And then I went on with the Student Osteopathic Medical Association's Overdose Prevention Task Force, which is now the Overdose Prevention Committee. And we did a lot of great work nationally, did a lot of data waiver trainings for medical students so that they could hit the ground running with their DEA licenses to prescribe buprenorphine and Suboxone for their patients, and did lots of education in overdose prevention advocacy for osteopathic medical students across the country to get involved in advocacy. And then with AACOM, I did the Health Policy Internship, which I would really recommend to any students that are interested in advocacy, because I actually got to work with the government relations team and lobby basically with Congress people and talk with them about things that were important to the osteopathic profession. And that was a really great experience. And again, just kind of confirmed to me how important it is to really use your voice and advocate, because out in the policy sphere, there's not a lot of health professionals advocating for the well-being and needs of their patients and also the well-beings of osteopathic medical students. So by you bringing your perspective, you really make an impact and make a difference. And that was a fantastic experience for me. And I definitely think I will continue in the future. I think I might go down the line of the California Medical Association in residency, but we'll see how much time I have.
Opioid addiction obviously is such an important topic, and I think I applaud you for working on that. And it's not something that I'm super knowledgeable about, but I think for any listeners interested in just scratching the surface, we have an interview early in the podcast with a New York Tech physician / now professor who got addicted to narcotics, got addicted to prescription narcotics. And it's a really dark episode with, fortunately, a nice ending, I guess, if you could put it that way. But it's a very scary and, this could happen to anybody kind of episode. So it's really eye-opening. And there are books like Empire of Pain. I don't know if you've read that, but it just talks about the whole opioid epidemic in the United States, which I think if any medical, pre-medical doctor, anyone listening to this podcast is not versed in, I think it's such an important thing. And I think it's great that you've been involved in that.
It's been a really fantastic experience, and you're so right. Addiction is so ubiquitous and so highly stigmatized, especially among healthcare professionals, which is really sad because unfortunately healthcare professionals hold higher rates of substance use and substance misuse than the general population. And I think that's definitely attributable to the mental health crisis that we're dealing with too, and burnout among physicians and medical students as well. And definitely important to get involved. And I will say, no effort is too small in getting involved. Whatever you can do to kind of learn and inform yourself and educate yourself on the epidemic that we're facing, I think all the better. So whatever you can do is valuable. And I don't think it's a complex problem too difficult to be solved. I think we can overcome this and we can address this effectively. And it just takes passionate students and physicians to keep doing the good work that they're doing to help our patients.
All right, Chrissa. Listen, thank you so much for your time. I have one last grand finale question that I think is great to sum things up. So can you give us one piece of advice that you were given from someone else that you think is super important, has impacted you, that you think would be great to pass on to our listeners?
The first piece of advice, it's from my OCMM rotation with Dr. James Gatos out in the Bay Area. He had some really great advice on well-being and kind of how to approach that. His acronym is staying sane, SANE. If you're feeling really stressed out and you feel like you don't really know where to go from there with your wellness and mental well-being, you could start from there and see how it expands. So S stands for sleep. Make sure that you get your sleep, get your 8 hours every single night. Activity, if you can manage that after getting your 8 hours of sleep, get some exercise in. Nutrition, if you can manage that after getting your sleep and exercise, get some good meals going, take care of yourself in a healthy way. And then emotions, take care of your relationships. And I have gone back to that acronym over and over again throughout my medical career since I heard that. And it has been so helpful for my well-being and has honestly helped me with my academics and my clinical skills too, and being able to bolster those as well. So taking care of yourself, number one, would be my biggest piece of advice. It's what will help you be successful in life. And then I will just say, trust the process. Trust the process. It can be so hard. Medical school is such a difficult journey, but trust that you're going to come out where you need to be and just keep moving forward and do the best you can. Trust it. I did not trust it, but I do now.
All right, Chrissa. I mean, we really appreciate your time. You're totally awesome. Tammy Hendricks is 100% on the money. And again, I know you're going to match somewhere great, and I look forward to hearing where you end up going. And again, thanks for everything, and thanks for spending time with us tonight.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is great.
This concludes our episode of Do or Do Not. Send all inquiries, comments, suggestions, and even let us know if there's someone you want us to interview to doordonotpodcast@gmail.com. Don't forget to like us on Facebook at Do or Do Not Podcast for updates. If you enjoyed our podcast, please share it with your classmates and administration. We have plenty of more interviews lined up, and we're excited to share them with you. This is Tian Yu Shea. Thank you guys so much for listening to Do or Do Not.